Hollywood, 1941. The air is thick with the scent of popcorn, expensive perfume, and the electric crackle of flashbulbs. On the red carpet for the premiere of Hedy Lamarr glides through a sea of reporters. They shout questions, but not about her craft, not about the war effort, and certainly not about physics. They ask about her co-stars, her diet, her 7 marriages. The headlines the next day will read, "The Most Beautiful Woman in Film," a title that had become both her golden ticket and her gilded cage. The public consumed an image of celestial beauty, a face so perfect it seemed to preclude the possibility of a complex inner world. They saw a star, an object of fantasy. They were completely, utterly blind to the mind working furiously behind those famously violet eyes. Later that night, long after the applause has faded and the Klieg lights have gone dark, the real work begins. In the quiet of her Beverly Hills home, the glamour is shed like a costume. Spread across a grand mahogany desk where scripts should be are technical drawings and pages of complex calculations. She isn't memorizing lines, she is deconstructing the mechanics of naval warfare. While the world saw a celluloid goddess, Lamarr was a self-taught engineer, haunted by a problem that threatened to tip the scales of World War II. Her obsession was radio-controlled torpedoes. The technology was revolutionary, allowing ships to guide munitions toward enemy targets from a safe distance. But it had a fatal flaw. Its guidance system was vulnerable. A single dedicated radio frequency acted as an invisible string between the ship and the torpedo. All an enemy had to do was find that frequency and broadcast a powerful signal, static essentially, to sever the connection. The torpedo would go blind, veering uselessly off course. The solution seemed impossible. But Hedy Lamarr's intellect was forged in an environment few in Hollywood could comprehend. Years earlier, in her native Austria, she was Hedwig Kiesler, married to Friedrich Mondel, one of Europe's wealthiest and most notorious arms manufacturers. He was a supplier to the fascist governments of Italy and Germany, and their lavish dinner parties were filled not with actors, but with military strategists, weapons engineers, and Nazi officials. Trapped in an oppressive marriage, Lamarr was forced to attend these gatherings, where she was treated as little more than a beautiful ornament. But she listened. She absorbed every detail about munitions, ballistics, and the very real-world problems of signal jamming that plagued the era's military technology. She learned about the intricate dance of offense and defense, of signal and countersignal. Her escape from Mondel in Austria in 1937 wasn't just a flight to freedom. It was the liberation of a mind armed with classified, cutting-edge military knowledge that no one suspected she possessed. Now, in America, that hidden knowledge fueled a patriotic fire. She had seen the face of fascism up close and was determined to contribute something more meaningful than selling war bonds. She saw the newsreels of German U-boats devastating Allied shipping lanes, and she knew the vulnerability of their torpedo guidance systems was a critical weakness. The sketches on her desk were not the idle doodles of a dilettante. They were precise diagrams for a revolutionary wartime invention, a system that could make torpedo signals unjammable. The public persona of Hedy Lamarr was a carefully constructed fiction, a mask she wore for the cameras. The private reality was a brilliant inventor grappling with one of the most pressing technological challenges of her time. The world celebrated her for the face she showed them, entirely ignorant of the genius she hid. How could a silver-screen siren, with no formal scientific training, conceive of something so vital, so far removed from her public persona? And why, when she finally perfected her brilliant idea, did it vanish into the archives, unheard and ignored by the very people it was designed to help?
That unheard idea, born from clandestine observations in Austria and refined in the late-night solitude of a Beverly Hills mansion, needed a catalyst to become reality. A mind dismissed as a pretty face found its unlikely counterpart not in a university laboratory or a government think tank, but at a Hollywood dinner party. There, Lamarr met George Antheil, a man as unconventional as she was underestimated. Antheil was a composer, an avant-garde provocateur known as the bad boy of music. His most famous work, the Berlin, was a chaotic modernist symphony written for 16 synchronized player pianos, airplane propellers, and electric bells. He was a futurist, an eccentric, and crucially, an inventor who understood the complex mechanics of synchronization. When Lamarr explained her concept for a jam-proof guidance system, he didn't see a naive actress playing at science. He saw the elegant, powerful logic of her idea. He saw the genius. Their collaboration was a fusion of her military-industrial insight and his expertise in automated musical instruments. Together, they refined the concept. The core problem was how to make a radio signal disappear from enemy scanners. The solution, they realized, was not to hide it, but to make it move. This was the birth of frequency hopping. The analogy they used was beautifully simple, drawing directly from Antheil's work. Imagine two-player pianos. One is on the ship launching the torpedo, and an identical one is inside the torpedo itself. Both are loaded with identical pre-punched paper rolls. This roll contains a sequence of notes, a random chaotic melody that only the two pianos know. Each of the 88 keys on the piano corresponds to a different radio frequency. As the roll plays, the transmitter on the ship and the receiver in the torpedo simultaneously jump from one frequency to another, in perfect pre-programmed synchronization. An enemy trying to jam the signal would be like a person trying to disrupt a song by hitting a single piano key. They might block one note for a fraction of a second, but by the time they did, the melody, the guidance signal, would have already jumped to a dozen other keys, continuing its path uninterrupted. It was a symphony of secure communication. On August 11, 1942, their work was officially documented. U.S. patent number 2,292,387 for a secret communication system was granted to Hedy Lamarr and George Antheil. The document, available in the U.S. Patent Office archives to this day, is a testament to their brilliance. Its dry, technical language describes a system decades ahead of its time, a robust and elegant solution to a life-or-death wartime problem. They proudly presented their patented invention to the U.S. Navy. Here was a potential war-winning technology handed over free of charge by a passionate patriot. And the U.S. Navy, locked in a desperate global conflict, looked at the patent, looked at the inventors, and saw only a movie star and a musician. The institutional gatekeepers of science and military technology were utterly blinded by their own prejudices. The feedback was dismissive. The player piano mechanism, they argued, was too bulky and impractical to fit inside a torpedo. This was a valid engineering challenge, but it was a problem to be solved, not a reason for outright rejection. The deeper, unwritten rejection was social. A woman, particularly a glamorous Hollywood actress, was simply not perceived as a credible source of technological innovation. The systemic bias was palpable, a wall of condescension built on the belief that beauty and brains were mutually exclusive. The Navy's advice to Lamarr was a patronizing pat on the head. She could best serve the war effort, they said, by using her celebrity to sell war bonds. Her genius was shelved. Her beauty, the very thing that made her famous, had become an insurmountable barrier to her intellectual credibility. The patent, a masterpiece of applied science, was stamped classified and left to gather dust in a government archive. The world needed her invention, but it couldn't see past her image. Who signed off on that dismissal, effectively sidelining a critical wartime advantage and erasing a woman's contribution from the pages of history? The signature on that dismissal order may be lost to bureaucratic archives, But the signature of Hedy Lamarr's idea would eventually be written across the entire digital world. From that wartime rejection and the subsequent decades of obscurity, her dormant patent began its slow, quiet resurrection. The patent itself expired in 1959, its potential seemingly unrealized. Lamarr's Hollywood career faded, and she retreated into a reclusive life, her secret contribution a footnote in a life the public thought they knew. But an idea that powerful does not simply die. The concept of spread-spectrum communication, the very principle she had pioneered, was independently developed and explored by military and private sector engineers in the late 1950s. They replaced the cumbersome piano rolls with newly developed transistor technology and later microchips. But the foundational logic, hopping between frequencies to create a secure, robust signal, was identical to the one laid out in U.S. Patent Number 2,292,387. Her idea, once dismissed, was now being implemented in high-stakes military applications. During the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis, U.S. Navy ships used a spread-spectrum communication system to secure communications during the tense naval blockade, ensuring their signals could not be intercepted or jammed by the Soviets. The irony is staggering. The very institution that had rejected her invention was now relying on its technological descendant to prevent nuclear war. As the Cold War progressed, the technology proliferated. It formed the basis of the U.S. military's Milstar satellite communication network and was a cornerstone of secure battlefield communications. Yet, for all this time, Hedy Lamarr's name was absent from the story. The credit went to the defense contractors and the government engineers who built upon her foundation, while the architect herself remained forgotten. The true explosion of her legacy came with the dawn of the digital age. As engineers looked for ways to allow multiple wireless devices to communicate without interfering with each other, they turned to spread-spectrum technology. Lamarr's frequency hopping became the bedrock for modern wireless communication. Every time your smartphone connects to a Wi-Fi network, it is using a system that rapidly switches frequencies to find the clearest channel, a direct evolution of her concept. When you pair your Bluetooth headphones to your phone, that seamless, secure connection is made possible by a frequency hopping protocol that prevents interference from other devices. Even the global positioning system uses spread-spectrum techniques to ensure its faint signals can be clearly received from satellites orbiting thousands of miles above the Earth. Millions, then billions of people began using technology daily that owed its existence to a 1940s patent filed by a Hollywood star, and almost no one knew it. It wasn't until the late 1990s, when the internet allowed for the rapid dissemination of information, that her story began to surface. The Electronic Frontier Foundation, a digital rights group, discovered her patent and, in 1997, honored her with a Pioneer Award. When told of the award, Lamarr, then in her 80s, reportedly said, "Well, it's about time." Her posthumous induction into the National Inventors Hall of Fame in 2014 was a final, official acknowledgement of a truth that had been suppressed for over half a century. Her story is a powerful, infuriating case study in systemic erasure, forcing us to ask the unavoidable question: how many other revolutionary ideas from marginalized thinkers, especially women, have been lost to history, not for lack of brilliance, but for lack of recognition, simply because the inventor didn't fit the world's narrow mold of what a genius was supposed to look like? The invisible waves of data that connect our world today carry the echo of her brilliant mind, a mind the world tried and failed to silence.